Amazing rescue, boy urges, cowboy to save Apache, mother as shocking truths are revealed. Jake Thompson felt like a ghost in his own home. As he watched his older brother Matt bask in accolades for his latest athletic achievements, Jake remained invisible, lost in the shadows of the family ranch. The dusty walls around him echoed the accolades his brother received, while Jake languished in the quiet corners of the house, dreaming of adventures that felt worlds away. In a small sun-baked Arizona town where every eye was on the golden athlete, Jake wondered if he would ever discover a place where he truly belonged. On this blistering afternoon, the heat shimmered off the horizon like a mirage as Jake wandered beyond the familiar boundaries of town. The rustic charm of the landscape felt almost like a prison. But just as he was about to turn back, he heard a choked gasp. It drew him deep into the brush, where he found Mariah, an elderly Apache woman, crumpled beside her frightened horse. Her spirit, as frail as her body, flickered like a candle's flame. Alone, her son stationed overseas, she was a reflection of Jake's own isolation. Determination ignited within him. Jake rushed to her side. "Are you okay? What happened?" The words spilled out, urgent and frantic. She looked at him with eyes that mirrored his own fears, unseen, unheard, and unloved. As she spoke about her fall, the weight of her loneliness crushed over him like a wave, and he felt a bound connection, two souls tethered by isolation. "I can help you, Mariah," he said after a moment of hesitation. But who was he? Just a boy, unrecognized and insignificant. Mortification twisted like a knot in his stomach. What could he do against the might of prejudice that whispered through town? Suddenly, he thought of Colt, the rugged rancher known for his kindness hidden beneath layers of hard exterior. Colt's unwavering presence grounded Jake. He knew if anyone had the strength and compassion to assist Mariah, it would be him. "Please," Jake breathed out, desperation thickening the air around him as he implored Colt to help Mariah. The thought of approaching him, of laying bare his own fears, sent tremors through his chest. But beneath that unease brewed the promise of something more, a fierce need to stand for what was right, against the quiet trepidation around him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing moment, the urgency surged. The town seemed divided, whispers thick with suspicion. Jake could feel the weight of judgment surrounding Mariah like a storm closing in. Wasn't this the opposite of what they were taught about equality? Jake battled within himself. If he stood against the tide, would he finally be seen, or would he remain just another faceless echo in his town? Colt, revealed as a mentor, also battled his own fears beneath the roughness of his exterior. The bitter reality raced forward like the wild horses he often wrangled. Should he risk the wrath of his peers, or protect a woman in need? Jake's breaths quickened, a raging storm of emotions inside him. He could stand tall or fade away. As mounting pressures frayed his resolve, a question arose. Could he become the hero Mariah needed, or would fear keep him shackled to silence and solitude? With untold truths poised to unravel their community, Jake found himself at a crossroads, the threshold to his own existence trembling underfoot. Would he muster the courage to step into the light, risking rejection for the sake of what was right? Or would he remain the boy lost in the glaring sun, watchful yet unseen, longing for a bravery that felt just out of reach? The air thickened with the promise of change, and the moment hung heavy, ripe for transformation. Jake stood rooted in place, the weight of uncertainty heavy on his shoulders. Silence enveloped the brush around him, broken only by the anxious whinnies of Mariah's horse. Each breath he took was laced with trepidation as he grappled with the impending choice of whether or not to summon Colt's help. The rugged rancher had always been a figure of strength in Jake's life, a silent hero who had endured both the struggles and whispers of the town. But now, it would take more than admiration. It would demand vulnerability and openness, emotions Jake rarely dared to display. Images of Colt flashed in Jake's mind. The steadfast gaze, his capable hands, and the rare moments of laughter they would share while mending fences or breaking horses. To approach him with a plea for help now felt daunting, an act of desperation that could threaten their bond. Was Jake ready to shatter the walls he had built, risking his own dignity for a woman who had become a stranger in her own home? Questions churned within him, battling against the fire of determination igniting in his chest. He had never been noticed for anything admirable. He was always relegated to the background, a constant comparison to Matt's shining moments. Yet here stood Mariah, a fragile figure tethered to a life of solitude, a legacy woven into the very landscape of his town. Somehow, he understood her the way he had never understood the whirl of accolades surrounding his brother. "Mariah," he said softly, "I'm going to get help." Her eyes, dimmed by fear and isolation, brightened briefly with hope. In that fleeting moment, Jake glimpsed a reflection of himself, not the boy who faded into obscurity, but the man he could become, filled with purpose fueled by courage. The path toward Colt's ranch felt treacherous as he trudged through the thick underbrush, every rustle serving as a reminder of his fear. But his resolve hardened with each step, illuminating the dust-scuffed ground before him. Would reaching out to Colt be an act of rebellion against his own self-doubt? It was more than just Mariah's fate hanging in the balance. It was a pivotal moment for him, too. When he finally arrived at Colt's ranch, he stood for a moment, surveying the sprawling land. The rancher's figure appeared, silhouetted against the amber sky, the rugged outline a dichotomy of strength and solitude much like his own. Summoning every ounce of courage, Jake approached. "Colt!" His voice trembled as he called out, forcing himself to swallow the anxiety crushing his throat. Colt turned, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern as he noted Jake's urgency. "What's wrong, kid?" Jake's heart raced at the comfort in Colt's steady tone, a solid anchor amidst the tumult within him. "It's Mariah. She's hurt, and she needs your help. Please." The rancher's brow furrowed, processing the request. "Where is she?" Jake pointed back into the distance, and as Colt began to mount his horse, a flicker of fear intermingled with newfound strength surged through Jake. This was it, the moment he'd chosen to rise above the shadows, to shoulder the mantle of responsibility not just for Mariah but for himself. Maybe he would be seen this time, not just as the shadow of his brother or the quiet boy, but as a courageous young man taking a stand. As Colt kicked into motion, Jake followed suit, breath quickening, heart racing, a persistent pulse of determination thrumming within him. In that moment, Jake realized this was about more than Mariah's rescue. It was about breaking free from his own invisible shackles. Triumph, he understood, was not merely the outcome of bravery. It was the embrace of a path he had long yearned to traverse. Yet, with each stride forward, the gnawing doubts began to creep back. What would become of him once sunlight revealed his presence? Would he be cast aside like before, or would he finally find acceptance? The ride felt like a plunge into uncharted waters, fear mingling with exhilaration. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed the impending moment of confrontation. But as they raced into the unknown, a daunting question lingered in his mind. Would he be able to bear the weight of his newfound identity, or would the past pull him back into the dark? The horizon stretched out before him, a vast expanse full of both potential and peril, as uncertainty hovered around him like a relentless ghost. Jake clenched his jaw, ready to chase down the lurking shadows. One way or another, the true test of who he was about to become awaited just beyond the next hill. The wind whipped through Jake's hair as he rode beside Colt, the rhythm of hooves thudding against the ground. Each beat resonated with the urgency of their mission, amplifying the stakes in Jake's mind. He was no longer the boy who shrank away from challenges. This ride felt like a claim to a new identity, but with it came the burden of expectation. "Damn it, Jake! What happened?" Colt's voice cut through the thundering silence as they galloped, urgency lacing every syllable. "I don't know," Jake admitted. His heart raced not just from the speed of the ride, but from the weight of trying to articulate the confusion swirling within him. "I just found her like that, alone, frightened. I've never seen her like that before." Colt nodded, the steely resolve in his gaze as they approached the edge of the brush. They would soon break into the clearing where Mariah had interrupted the tranquility of that afternoon. What if they arrived too late? Jake's stomach churned at the thought. He mentally crushed the apprehension like an unwelcome weed, forcing himself to think of Mariah's expression of feeble hope when he had promised to get help. The ride became a mental crucible, and in it, he wrestled with an evolving reflection of himself. He was not Jake, the inconspicuous, overshadowed younger brother. He was Jake, the protector, the one who sought to shield not just Mariah, but himself from the constraints of his own past. "You told her you're going to help her?" Colt's voice disrupted his racing thoughts, jolting him back to the present. "I did," Jake replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "She needs someone to stand by her. I want to be that person." Colt's brow furrowed, and for a moment he seemed to consider Jake with a newfound respect. "A person can't transform overnight, you know. What happens when the dust settles? When you return to normal life?" The question hit like a gunshot, shaking Jake to the core. He opened his mouth to respond, but then hesitated. Would he go back to allowing others to define him? The thought turned his stomach. "Maybe I don't want to go back to the way things were," he finally muttered, feeling that vulnerability yet again. Colt glanced over, assessing the conviction in Jake's voice. "You have to be ready for what comes next, you understand? It's a heavy mantle. You can be proud of this moment, but you've got to stand tall in your skin after the ride ends." Jake absorbed Colt's words. The weight they carried resonated deeply within him, unearthing a realization that eclipsed the lurking fears. It wasn't just about revealing his strength, it was about accepting and owning it. This newfound intimate honesty with himself was both exhilarating and terrifying, a foundation to build upon. As they finally broke through the tree line, the sight before them was a vivid tableau of urgency. Mariah lay awkwardly in a small clearing, her face streaked with dirt and streaks of fear shadowing her eyes. At that moment, the atmosphere shifted, the air thickened, charged with potential and pain, as Jake felt his heart launch into a harder cadence. He dismounted, urgency propelling him toward her. "Mariah," he called, his voice desperate but firm. Her gaze flitted up to meet his, and amidst the fear, something flickered there. Recognition, perhaps? In that fleeting moment, the weight of her isolation seemed to lift, however momentarily. With Colt arriving at his side, Jake knew this was the moment he could either stumble or conquer. Bowls of doubt still simmered in him. Could he really be the hero Mariah needed? A shape of confidence swelled within the clouds hanging over him, but the song of uncertainty played just beneath the surface. What if his efforts didn't matter? He could feel the tide of fear threatening to sweep in as he extended his hand toward her, ready to break the boundaries of both her despair and his self-imposed limitations. "Jake." Mariah's voice wavered, unsure yet somehow seeking assurance. Her fear mirrored his own uncertainties. A silent understanding formed between them, roots deep in a shared sense of isolation. Would he be able to cross this divide into the realm of action without losing himself in the process? The stakes had risen, and Jake braced himself for the consequences of stepping forward, both for Mariah and for the unfolding trail of his own transformation. As he knelt beside her, the world faded into nothing more than the whispered vibrations of their shared struggle. The moment was nearing, a precipice from which he would leap into an uncharted territory, but a deeper question resonated. What would come of Jake when the dust settled? The clearing felt charged, anticipation crackling in the air, an unsettling reminder that every choice he made now would shape the narrative of his existence. What would he decide when confronted directly with Mariah's pain and his own destiny? How far was he willing to journey into his own darkness to emerge into the light? The profound silence filled the air as he braced himself for what lay ahead, a confrontation not just with Mariah's fears, but with his own. Jake's hand hovered just above Mariah's, the gaping chasm of fear and uncertainty thrumming between them. It was a surreal moment, the world around him fading into a dull murmur, while his focus sharpened on the delicate task ahead. Her eyes were pools of vulnerability, yet inside that trembling exterior he sensed an undercurrent of strength, a reflection of his own battling spirit. "Jake," she whispered again, the tremor in her voice revealing an urgent call for assurance. That simple plea ignited a spark within him. He realized that the identity he was scrambling to define could not emerge without confronting their shared chaos. "Mariah, I'm here," he stated, his voice steadying as he met her gaze. The simplicity of his words held weight. For the first time, he wasn't just speaking to fill space. He was extending an offer, a lifeline. He gently grasped her hand, feeling the heat radiate from her skin. A connection, fragile yet electrifying. At the same moment, Colt remained slightly back, assessing the scene for any lurking dangers, yet his attention glued to Jake. There was a school of thought that hovered between them, the silent exchange of what it meant to embrace responsibility. Although fear played in the back of Jake's mind, riding through the storm seemed a worthwhile trade to snag a piece of hope from the chaos. "What happened to you?" Jake asked, his voice more urgent than soothing. He needed clarity, not just for Mariah, but for his own growing resolve. I don't know," she stammered, her breath hitching as she tried to articulate her story. They came for me, and I ran. I just didn't want to be alone." The confession hung like a heavy fog, cloaking them both in a mutual understanding of isolation. Jake could feel it. The pulse of her fear mirrored his own. The corners of his reality were suddenly stark and defined. Her pain danced like a fire against his insecurities. Was this not just a rescue for Mariah, but a reclamation of his own narrative as well? "Just breathe, Mariah," he assured her, noticing her erratic exhalations. "Focus on me." As he spoke, he felt a shift within himself. He began piecing together the fragmented parts of who he thought he needed to be, stepping into the role of protector, a role that felt more authentic with every passing second. Colt moved closer, reminding Jake of the urgency buried beneath this moment of connection. "We need to get her out of here, now. It's not safe." There was a resolute finality in Colt's voice that snapped Jake back to the present. "Okay," Jake affirmed, nodding firmly. "Can you stand, Mariah?" He helped her to her feet, noting how unsteady she was. The weight of her fear translated into both of their realities. He had to be her anchor. Her fingers tightened around his wrist, and as she steadied herself, he felt the profound affirmation of sharing burdens. In that transitory space, Mariah wasn't the lost girl anymore. She became a partner in this moment, a catalyst for his metamorphosis. If he could help lift her from the shadows encroaching on their lives, perhaps he could rise alongside her. "Yes, I can," she finally breathed, a flicker of determination igniting in her eyes. With Colt scanning their surroundings for threats, Jake guided her away from the clearing, a protective stance settling in as adrenaline coursed through him. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he was now fueled by a burgeoning purpose. "We need to move fast. Follow my lead." As they navigated through the thicket, a troubling thought wrestled within him. Was it all right to claim agency in a world that had silenced their voices for so long? Would he stay true to the promise of being not just a protector, but somebody who could navigate this labyrinth of fears and impose their own narrative? The underbrush rustled ominously behind them, a reminder that the comfort he sought was still tangled in danger. Colt's hand moved to grip the weapon at his hip, ready for anything lurking in the shadows. As Jake led Mariah closer to safety, he could feel the tremors of conflict shake the foundation of his spirit. Would he become the embodiment of strength or falter, retreating back into the shadows he wished to escape? The tempest of his internal struggle threatened to overshadow their exodus, but he forced himself to focus forward. Every step forward was a challenge to question the limits he had long accepted. The distance between them and danger narrowed, and a new realization loomed. They were not just fleeing. This was a confrontation with everything they had feared. As they finally emerged from the thicket, Jake took in the vast sky stretching above the horizon, full of possibilities and uncharted paths. But with resolve came the sobering reminder that this was only the beginning. What faced them ahead was an undeniable truth. In protecting Mariah, he was forging a new version of himself, one that would have to confront its own specters before it could truly emerge into the light. The real test of his transformation awaited just beyond the clearing, and determination flooded Jake as he moved toward it, his heart pounding with the reality that he was standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into whatever lay ahead. Would he find the courage to keep going when all that remained was the unknown? Jake pushed through the underbrush, senses heightened as they sought refuge from the chaos that engulfed them. Every crack of a twig beneath his feet felt like a warning bell, resonating with the weight of responsibility he had just taken on. He cast a glance back at Mariah, her face a blend of fear and determination, a reflection of his own internal war. He fought against the voice urging him to retreat, to blend into the shadows where it was safer. "Keep up," he urged, his tone firmer than he felt. Each word was like a small anchor in the storm of uncertainty swirling around them. If he faltered now, if he let the doubt seep in, how could he expect Mariah to find her own footing? Colt was vigilant, scanning the area ahead, tension radiating off him like heat from the pavement. Jake had no choice but to trust him. Yet as they pressed on, an unsettling silence loomed, punctuating the urgency of their escape. Nothing laid before them but a faded path snaking toward a forgotten piece of sanctuary, and the rustle of the foliage seemed to whisper warnings of what lay behind. As they trudged through the thickening fog of fear and uncertainty, Jake's mind usurped his present awareness. Could he muster the strength to stand up for Mariah when the moment demanded it? Could he shoulder the weight of her past if it came crashing down? He thought of the unknown yet blasted landscapes they would have to traverse. "Do you think they'll find us?" Mariah's voice broke through his reverie, pulling him back into the reality of their situation. The fear wrapped around her words sliced through him, revealing vulnerabilities he had hoped to shield both of them from. "I don't know," he replied honestly, a knot tightening in his stomach. "But I won't let that happen." Her hand tightened around his again, an electric reminder that they were in this together. It ground him in a way he hadn't expected. The act of holding on to her created a tether, linking them tightly against the chaos encroaching from behind. Suddenly it hit him. In stepping forward, he wasn't just safeguarding Mariah. He was also cultivating an inner resolve forged in the fire of uncertainty. She was not simply a delicate figure needing rescue. She was his partner in redefining their destinies, no longer confined by the shadows they'd stumbled through. With each passing moment, Jake felt traces of courage unfolding within him. But alongside it lingered a gnawing apprehension. What if the journey ahead required more of him than he was prepared to give? As if sensing his inner turmoil, he glanced at Mariah. Her eyes, fraught with questions, seemed to reflect his own uncertainty. "Jake," she began hesitantly, "what if we can't outrun them?" The question hung, heavy and alive, challenging his resolve. Would he allow the very fear he fought against consume him, or would he stand tall in the face of the trembling abyss? Without thinking, Jake responded with conviction, "Then we confront them." The words ignited something deep within him, a raw declaration of defiance against the darkness trying to snatch them back. In that moment, it became clear to him, the confrontation wasn't just with forces that pursued them. The real foe resided in the echoes of their self-doubt. The specter of inadequacy loomed larger than any physical threat pressing in upon them. The fog thinned slightly as they reached the perimeter of a clearing, sunlight breaking through like a beacon, illuminating the path ahead. It was an encouraging sight, yet a realization gripped him. Being in the light was not just about safety. To stride into the brightness meant stepping into the unknown, confronting fears that remained hidden and collective uncertainties with Mariah. As they stood at the edge, Jake felt the depth of his potential unfurling before him, a vibrant tapestry of choices and actions yet to be woven. Where once there had been uncertainty, clarity began to crystallize. He would have to nurture the growing strength inside him if hope was to take root. But before they made it into that light, behind them, a noise shattered the silence. The unmistakable sound of footsteps crashed through the underbrush, closing in with ferocity. Jake's heart raced. Were they too late? "Run!" he shouted, urgency electrifying his voice as the thudding grew closer. Now it was a test of choice and courage. Could he shield Mariah from what lay behind them, and in doing so, discover the warrior whose spirit had always been locked within? As they fled toward the clearing's promise, Jake's thoughts rallied for the fight. He was ready to confront the truth of who he could become, if only he could hold on to his determination in the face of the approaching storm. The next pivotal step awaited them just beyond the light, and with it, the terrifying potential for revelation. Jake plunged into the clearing, the sunlight catching his skin like a long-forgotten friend. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to stop, to take a breath, and regain composure. But as Mariah sprinted beside him, determination etched on her face, he understood surrender was not an option. They would not simply evade their pursuers, they would confront whatever came next. The sound of footsteps grew fainter behind them, replaced by the rustle of wind through the trees, and that fleeting moment of safety allowed Jake the space to reflect. This journey wasn't merely physical, it was a battleground for his spirit. He needed to tap deeper into the resolve that had sparked within him, to turn this adrenaline rush into something transformative. The encounter looming ahead had to be more than an escape. It had to be a defense of their very identities. "What now?" Mariah asked, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Her eyes swept the clearing, scanning for signs of danger or escape routes. The enormity of the situation dawned upon him. This was their chance to redefine their path, yet uncertainty loomed like a specter. "We need to find a place to regroup," he suggested, instinctively steering her towards a cluster of trees on the opposite side of the clearing. As they moved, Jake felt a surge of clarity. Each step he took, no longer just away from the danger, was also toward reclaiming a sense of power. The waning shadows of doubt were receding, churned away by his decision to act rather than react. As they ducked behind the colossal trunk of an ancient oak, Jake's mind raced. How did one muster the courage to face fear, to lay down the armor of self-doubt? He thought of Mariah's question back in the underbrush. What if they couldn't outrun their pursuers? The answer stared back from the depths of his internal struggle. They would have to confront their fears head-on. "Do you think we can hide?" Mariah's voice trembled, her fingers nervously tracing the bark of the tree. "We need a plan," Jake replied, his instinct for leadership igniting. "It's time we confront what's behind us. Whatever's pursuing us keeps feeding on our fears. If we let them control us now, we may never escape." Looking into Mariah's eyes, he saw more than fear. He saw the same flicker of resolve he felt in himself. The reality of their situation crystallized between them. He couldn't just protect her. He had to empower her to see her strength, to help her realize they were both capable of confronting whatever they had run from. "Your past doesn't define you, Mariah. It doesn't have to guide us now," he said, his heart racing again, but this time with conviction. "Whatever comes for us, we can face together." The words were like a balm, soothing yet electrifying. But just then, a snap of a twig broke through the tentative silence of the woods, reverberating in the space between action and hesitation. They both tensed. Instinctively they glanced toward the sound. It was time for decisions. He could see that indecision flickered in Mariah's gaze, a reflection of his own fading doubts. "Stay alert," Jake whispered, positioning himself in front of Mariah, bracing for whatever might emerge from the shadows. The thud of feet neared once more, echoing through his thoughts like a battle drum. There was no longer room for hesitation. He had to either cower behind their temporary shield or stand firm against their threat. The urge to flee clawed at him, but Jake felt a new courage growing. Perhaps this moment was not just a conflict against an outside force, but ultimately a confrontation with his own limits of bravery. What was about to emerge from the underbrush, the threats, the enemies, these were mere distractions. The real battle was one of self-discovery. As the shapes of figures became discernible in the shadowy light, Jake took a deep breath, ready to face not just whatever was coming, but his evolving self. The moment of confrontation was at hand, and with it, the promise of transformation. In that moment, standing at the brink, Jake realized there was another layer to uncover. He wasn't just the defender, but also the potential architect of his own destiny. He felt the palpable energy around him shift. Now wasn't just about survival, but about embracing the unknown that lay ahead. As the figures emerged, the air crackled with oppressive tension, and Jake felt a sliver of dread zigzag through him. What awaited them? Another chase? A fight? Would he discover allies in the most unexpected forms, or fall into the very trap they had escaped? The moment of choice became a rife battleground. What waited just beyond those shadows could force them both to confront the truths they had long buried. And Jake steeled himself, ready to discover just how far he was willing to go. The figures emerged slowly, their shapes painted in shades of indistinct brown and green, cloaked in the shadows that danced across the clearing. Jake's heart thudded in his chest, a drum marking the seconds that stretched like an eternity. He caught a glimpse of their faces, and a chill pinched his spine. None were entirely unfamiliar, remnants of memories heady with confusion, and remnants of a past he'd tried to forget, twisted and twisted inside him. "Jake," Mariah whispered, her voice laced with fear. She stepped closer, her body pressing against him as she instinctively searched for solace in his presence. He met her gaze, trying to maintain a facade of confidence that he didn't fully feel. But intertwined with his trepidation was a burgeoning resolve to protect her, not just physically, but to defend her spirit as well. Something was shifting within him. The weight of responsibility was fine-tuning his instincts. "Listen to me," he said quietly but firmly. "If things go south, keep moving. Trust your instincts." These words hung in the air, a promise and a challenge, but they also kindled a spark of determination. He felt she might need reassurance against the shadows creeping into her mind. The lead figure broke from the pack, stepping into the daylight with an aura of authority. His face, angular and sharp, was marred by a long scar that traced across his cheek. The man's eyes searched them with a predator's intensity, making Jake's stomach churn. It was clear that they were not merely another group of lost souls in the woods. These were threats born of malice, shadows that thrived on despair. "Who are you?" Jake called out, his voice steadier than he anticipated. It reverberated through the clearing like a demand for answers. "Who we are is not what matters," the man replied, a smirk playing on his lips. "What matters is who you are." Those words struck a nerve within Jake. It was as if the man had seen past his facade, straight into the core of his insecurities. Jake felt the walls he had built around himself begin to tremble. Was this truth being revealed about him, or merely a ploy to sow discord? The line between reality and manipulation began to blur, igniting a battle within his mind. Thinking quickly, Jake wanted to shift the battlefield. "You're making a mistake if you think intimidation will work on us. We've faced our fears already," he replied, surprised by the strength lacing his words. This was a moment of testing, a trial by fire, where he had to stand tall or risk sinking into the doubt that had haunted him. Mariah's hand found his, steadying his resolve as she squeezed it tightly, a silent affirmation that they were in this together. "So you believe you can simply walk away from what you've done?" The man's eyes narrowed, probing the air between them like an omen. "You think you can escape the repercussions of your past? It doesn't work that way." The confrontation transformed into a crucible as Jake felt the weight of their past choices press heavily on his shoulders. The shadows of his uncertainties loomed larger, threatening to drown him in regret. But there was a voice rising from within, a deeper understanding that these were not just threats. They were part of his journey and the unresolved conflicts lurking in the depths of his psyche. "Perhaps I can't escape it, but I can confront it," Jake said, the words pouring forth with a newfound clarity. "You want to shake me? You have no idea what I'm capable of when pushed." The man scoffed, dismissive. "And what exactly is that? Running away again? Hiding behind bravado?" "No," Jake retorted, anger boiling beneath his composure. "Choosing to face each shadow, finding strength in vulnerability, that's what I'm capable of." In that instant, he began to realize that confronting their pursuers was not the sum of their struggle. It would ultimately empower them both. They had to turn this confrontation into a learning experience about trust and resilience, for themselves and for each other. As tension crackled, Jake awaited a response, knowing the confrontation was as much a quest for self-discovery as it was a standoff against external threats. Would they find strength in their vulnerability, or would the darkness engulf them? Just then, the man's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise and intrigue crossing his face. For the first time, Jake sensed uncertainty radiating from his opponent. What lay ahead now was a dangerous game of psychological chess. Would the man relent, offering them a chance at redemption? Or was this a veiled trap, thinly disguised by the fallacy of understanding? With beliefs grappling for space in his mind, Jake prepared to defy all expectations. What he hadn't anticipated was that within the heart of fear could also lie revelation, a duality they needed to unravel in order to break free. As the tension reached a slick tipping point, Jake understood their next move would determine the course of their fates. Would courage trump complacency, or would they be consumed by the very shadows they sought to flee? Jake stood his ground, every muscle coiled like a taut wire, anticipating the next gamble in this approach to a showdown. The air turned thick, filled with unspoken truths and a current of unrelenting tension. Mariah's grip on his hand felt like a lifeline, anchoring him in uncertain waters. The man with the scar took a step closer, the sunlight casting angular shadows across his features. Confronting your fears is only part of the equation, boy. What is your plan once you stand in the face of darkness? Do you have what it takes to fight? Jake's mind raced, grappling with the implications of those words. It was one thing to verbalize his newfound resolve, but another to translate that into action. Could he truly confront not just others, but also the fears buried deep within himself? Every choice has consequences, the man continued, his voice smooth like silk over stone. And every fear, if not faced, becomes a chain. Chains. That simple word echoed in Jake's mind, jolting him into a moment of clarity. He recalled his past, a string of decisions that had led him here, each cloaked in self-denial. Wasn't that the very essence of the struggle? His own tendency to recoil when faced with uncomfortable truths, the tiptoeing around unresolved guilt, the running away from confrontation. "No," Jake replied, this time with a steadiness that surprised even him. "I'm done hiding. Fear isn't the enemy. It's the key to understanding who we really are and who we can be." Behind him, he sensed Mariah's breath quicken, the weight of his declaration shifting the atmosphere around them. Perhaps confronting this darkness wasn't solely about survival. It was a chance for self-realization, a catalyst for growth. The leader's smirk faltered, revealing a glimpse of annoyance. "You think it's that easy? Cut through the chains, and what do you find on the other side?" Jake paused, reflecting deeply. The chains were more than just fear. They were woven from insecurities, regrets, and past failures that dictated his narrative up until now. If he was to break them, it would mean not only facing moments of despair, but embracing lessons learned. "I find strength and clarity," he insisted, feeling the words grip his core. "I find the courage to rewrite my story." Laughter erupted from the scarred man, a harrowing sound cutting through the tension. "Listen, boy, idealism will get you nowhere. You may wish to confront your past, but I promise that the past has its grip on you tighter than you think." "Maybe it does," Jake replied, his resolve intensifying. "But that only means I have to fight harder. I can't afford to let it dictate my future. None of us can." The breeze rattled through the trees, almost nodding in agreement. Muffled sounds of the forest mingled with the noise of their heightened confrontation. In that moment, Jake realized a valuable truth. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, but navigating through it with the intention to prevail. The man straightened, shifting back slightly, wariness lacing his features this time, as if Jake's words were stirring something profound deep within him. "What makes you think you'll prevail? You have no idea what you're up against." "No," Jake replied, his voice unwavering, "but I'm willing to learn. I'll adapt and grow stronger as I confront whatever comes our way." Jake felt the weight of responsibility envelop him even deeper, yet it was no longer suffocating. He was ready to embrace it, to learn not just from his past failures, but from this encounter itself. Could knowledge of his own vulnerabilities truly transform into a weapon against those who sought to exploit them? Suddenly, as if on cue, the leader squared his shoulders, a hardened glint returning to his eyes. "Well, if you're so eager to engage in this little dance with the past, allow me to be your partner." What lay ahead, Jake couldn't know, but in that moment, the stakes surged higher. It was no longer just about surviving the encounter. He was faced with the immediate challenge to evolve and seize control of the narrative. He glanced sideways at Mariah, who met his gaze with a flicker of fear and a vow of partnership. Now the real battle wasn't solely against their pursuers, but against the chains that held them each captive. As the leader gestured for the others to advance, Jake felt their collective past weighing down like a shroud. Were they prepared for the depths to which they'd have to plunge to truly liberate themselves? The air crackled again, a palpable electricity of potential and peril. Jake knew their fates were intertwining in this dark space. Their next move could either lead to freedom or further entrapment. "Let's see what you've got then," Jake thought, stepping forward with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the revelations of the past awaited them not just as obstacles but as truths to embrace. What would he discover as their journey unfolded in the throes of confrontation? And was he ready to face the darker realities that would undoubtedly come crashing through the veil? Jake's heart thundered as he stepped into the swirling maelstrom of conflict, the shadows of his past tugging at him with each stride. The response of the man before him showed only fleeting trepidation, but Jake sensed that hesitation was a crack in the armor, a vulnerability he could exploit. As more figures emerged from the underbrush, each draped in shadows and uncertainty, Jake's focus sharpened. Activation of instincts he hadn't known lay dormant within him began to bloom. He could feel the latent energy, a mix of fear and determination, as he sought to channel it into a strategy. Remember, they thrive on chaos. Jake recalled the words of a mentor from his past. He had learned that in times of conflict, clarity was vital. Clarity could illuminate the path through the darkness. With Mariah by his side, he felt a tether to hope. Together they were more than just individuals. They were a unit. "What's your plan, then?" Mariah whispered, her voice laced with urgency as the group edged closer, eyes piercing through the veil of uncertainty. "For now, just hold on," he whispered back, not fully certain of what he was thinking. Was he merely reacting, or was he strategically contemplating their escape? Looking at each opponent, he began to pick apart their possible intentions and weaknesses, his analytical mind wrestling with the adrenaline coursing through him. Each shadow cast by the trees encircling them seemed to whisper secrets that his instincts were poised to interpret. "Your first challenge," the scarred leader taunted, his twisted grin lit by a sunbeam filtering through the leaves, "is to make a choice. Do you face these men alone, or take her hand and run?" Jake's breath caught. Their very thoughts were being laid bare, revealing fears that loomed larger than life itself. It was a sick game, and yet therein lay a critical juncture for Jake. He needed to break apart the oppressive hold of indecision. In choice lay empowerment. "Do I stay and fight or retreat?" he reflected. "Do I save myself for another day, or risk it all for her?" His mind raced through the myriad of options, each more threatening than the last. He knew the instinct to flee was strong, felt sharp pangs of self-preservation, yet a flicker of rebellion sparked within him. By standing, he could reclaim his narrative. Having been paralyzed by fear for too long, the prospect of moving forward became tantalizingly evident. "This isn't just about me," Jake declared, his voice solid and unwavering. "We fight together, or we don't fight at all." The declaration empowered him, ringing with conviction that rose above his previous wavering doubts. The leader's focus shifted, eyebrows narrowing as Jake's words ignited a fire within not only him but Mariah too. In that moment, they were no longer trapped in chains. Together, they had forged a new narrative. "Strength in unity, is it? How quaint," the scarred man sneered, even as uncertainty rippled through his gaze. "Then allow me to help shatter that illusion." Jake braced himself, preparing for the onslaught. Each step they took toward confrontation was layered with the weight of their resolve. Just then, Jake recognized a familiar impulsiveness in him, a rush to act that had often led him to make hasty decisions in the past. He needed to temper that as he felt a strategic plan start to crystallize. "Together," he confirmed softly to Mariah, "we'll navigate this." Her steady nod bolstered his determination as he felt a pulsating awareness that they were both capable of facing this not just as participants but as conquerors of their fears. The challenge was daunting, but Jake knew they would emerge through this cocoon of uncertainty. Each interaction had already begun transforming them into something more resilient than they had ever imagined. "Ready to face the storm?" Mariah prompted, her eyes glimmering with resolve in the encroaching shadows. Jake gathered his breath, his muscles tense with anticipation. "Let's see what truths we uncover," he said, his heart racing as they prepared for whatever lay ahead, revealing themselves in the uncharted depths of their struggle against darkness. But as they faced their first imminent encounter, would their newfound strength hold steadfast, or would the past rush back to claim them? The air buzzed with a charged tension as Jake and Mariah prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The shadows of uncertainty that had loomed so heavily before them felt lighter now, crackling with purpose. No longer shackled by uncertainty, Jake stood firm, his heart pounding steadily in his chest, a metronome for his resolve. "Listen carefully," Jake urged, his voice low yet steady. "If we stay focused, if we trust our instincts, we can turn this around." He cast a glance at Mariah, her eyes wide but glimmering with newfound determination. There was a shared energy between them, a palpable bond formed through their trials that anchored their spirits against the chaos. As the scarred man took a step forward, the urgency intensified. Strength and unity, was it? Let's see how long that lasts under true pressure. The mocking tone rollicked in the air, yet Jake could sense a flicker of vulnerability beneath the bravado. Perhaps you underestimate what we are capable of, Jake countered boldly, stepping forward, squaring his shoulders against the threat. You think you can intimidate us into submission, but you haven't pushed us far enough. The words felt like a shield, fortifying his courage amidst potential despair. For the first time, he felt the weight of the past lifting off him, revealing the depth of his potential. No longer merely defined by the glowing accolades of his brother or his own feelings of insignificance, Jake was ready to claim his identity, one forged through struggle, resilience, and a powerful sense of responsibility toward Mariah. "Stand firm," Mariah shouted beside him, her voice rising in strength. "We won't let you manipulate us any longer." The passion in her declaration electrified the clearing, intertwining both of their fates in the face of adversity. Jake glanced sideways at her. A warrior ethos emerged in her spirit that mirrored his own. Here they were, two individuals, once cloaked in isolation, now standing unwavering against the storm. The shadows that tried to encroach upon them felt less formidable with each heartbeat. The scarred man exchanged glances with his comrades, the air thickening with uncertainty as their bond began to fracture. "You think standing together means you can win?" Jake took a confident step closer, a newfound awareness flooding over him. "No. We know we can prevail, not just against you, but against the shadows that threaten to define us." "What if it's not just about winning?" Mariah interjected, her voice ringing with clarity. "Maybe it's about learning from our pasts and refusing to be confined by them." A moment of silence hung in the air as their adversaries' expressions shifted, uncertainty gnawing at their bravado. This wasn't just about a physical fight. It was a battle for ideals, the reclamation of agency in a world riddled with defeatism and despair. Jake's pulse quickened, awareness dawning within him. This was the confrontation he had sensed was pending, the reckoning of his past defining moments. He had been pushed to the edge, and now he realized with clarity that this threshold would not break him. It would forge him anew. "Your intimidation tactics are antiquated," Jake declared, his voice steady as he faced the leader. "That style of control is fading, unable to grip those who choose to embrace their truths." The leader's expression shifted again, this time a glimmer of fascination sparking in his eyes. "What makes you so brave to believe you can remain unbroken by the weight of the past?" "Because we're not running from it," Jake replied, every word infused with conviction. "We've embraced it. We know our resilience shines brighter than the shadows looming over us." A ripple of uncertainty passed through the row of figures as they exchanged incredulous looks. How could two seemingly insignificant individuals challenge the illusions of power they held? It became clear. Jake and Mariah were redefining the narrative in this clearing, not just as victims, but as empowered individuals drawing strength from their vulnerability. The scarred man's bravado faltered, a moment's doubt creeping into his gaze. "You think you've broken free?" "Yes," Jake replied, his voice unwavering. "We've conquered our fears and reevaluated what weakness means. There lies profound strength in facing our true selves." The others hesitated. Jake could see it. The second of doubt reigned through their ranks as these shadows disintegrated before the undeniable light of their shared resolve. Perhaps they wouldn't just face the antagonism of their adversaries but awaken them as well. As they advanced, Jake took a deep breath, the scent of earth and sunlight filling his lungs, amplifying his clarity. "This is the moment we redefine who we are. The past no longer dictates our future. Yet if we confront you, it'll be a transformation for each of us." "Take your best shot," the scarred man sneered, but Jake could hear the tremor lurking beneath bravado. "Consider it already delivered," he stated, despite the racing pulse now flooding his veins. With Mariah at his side, he knew that confrontation meant much more than just survival. It heralded rebirth. In that charged moment, they surged forward, in unity, not merely against the shadows that threatened them, but toward a future replete with potential. They were no longer two isolated figures, but a force ready to reclaim their narratives. As fists were raised and the truth unfurled, Jake felt empowerment cascade through him, transforming both fear and uncertainty into tangible momentum. They would seize control of their destinies, confront what lay ahead, and rise together, emerge not just as survivors, but as architects of their identities. The battle ahead promised trials, yet Jake knew this was the initiation of change. With every challenge conquered, they ventured closer to liberation from the chains of the past. And in that resolve, they would discover that redemption could blossom only from navigating through chaos rather than fleeing from it. Jake was not just reclaiming his narrative, but finally claiming the vibrant existence that lay hidden beneath the surface, marked by intimacy, strength, and the transformational power of facing one's deepest shadows. With adrenaline coursing through their bodies, they charged forward, not merely to win but to redefine what victory could entail, defining lives reborn through trials faced and battles fought shoulder to shoulder, light emerging from the depth of shared struggles. This was the moment they seized control, not just of fate, but of their authentic selves, opening doors to possibilities once stifled. Here, as united spirits transcending the fear that once bound them, they would pave a way into uncharted worlds awaiting exploration, a testament to the power of courage echoing onward. As the confrontation erupted, deep within, they felt themselves transform, ready to embrace the inevitability of their evolution into strength. The past remained a shadow, but they would not be consumed by it. With each heartbeat, they would surge forth, unafraid to embrace their burgeoning futures, forever entwined in their journey of rediscovery. So let this be a lesson that values can only be realized through struggle, that transformation thrives not in comfort, but in moments of chaos where strength is truly born, and destiny reframed in powerful, unyielding light. Now here lies the challenge for you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this empowering resolution. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.